The rain drummed against the tall windows of Emma Hayes's home office as she reviewed surveillance footage on her third monitor, a steaming cup of coffee growing cold at her elbow. The blue glow from the screens cast shadows across her sharp features, highlighting the premature lines that had etched themselves around her eyes since leaving the FBI 18 months ago. At 34, she looked older, the kind of aging that comes not from years, but from seeing too much of humanity's capacity for evil. "Mommy, can Miss Sarah make pancakes for breakfast tomorrow?" 6-year-old Lily's voice drifted down from upstairs, followed by the melodic laugh of their nanny. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you want," came Sarah's response, syrupy sweet and perfectly pitched for a mother's ears. Emma's fingers paused over the keyboard. Something about that laugh, too practiced, too calculated. Her behavioral analysis training kicked in automatically, cataloging micro details that most people would dismiss. But Emma had learned to dismiss her own instincts after her breakdown. The doctors had been clear. Hypervigilance was a symptom, not a superpower. She forced herself to focus on the case files spread across her desk. 3 months of remote consulting work for insurance companies, tracking down fraudulent disability claims. It paid the bills and kept her mind occupied, but it was a far cry from the adrenaline-fueled investigations that had once defined her career. Upstairs, floorboards creaked as Sarah moved through Lily's bedtime routine. Emma had hired her 6 weeks ago through Seattle's most exclusive nanny agency, Prestige Childcare Services. Sarah Chen had come with impeccable references, a degree in early childhood development from UW, and 5 years of experience with high-profile families. More importantly, Lily had taken to her immediately, something that hadn't happened with any of the previous candidates. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from her ex-husband, David. "Mediation moved to Thursday. My lawyer thinks we can settle custody without court." She deleted the message without responding. David had made his position clear during their divorce proceedings. Emma's mental health issues made her an unfit mother for anything more than supervised visitation. The fact that she'd built a successful consulting business from home while maintaining primary custody seemed lost on him. Another creak from upstairs, but this one was different. Emma's head tilted, listening. The sound had come from the master bedroom, not Lily's room. Sarah should be reading bedtime stories right now, not wandering through the house. Emma rose from her chair, her training overriding the self-doubt that had plagued her since leaving the bureau. She moved silently to the bottom of the stairs, listening. Lily's voice carried down the hallway, animated as she talked about her day at school. But beneath it, Emma could hear something else, the soft scrape of a drawer being opened and closed. Her pulse quickened. The master bedroom contained her personal documents, financial records, and most importantly, copies of her FBI case files. Everything was locked in a fireproof safe, but... "Miss Sarah, you're not listening to my story," Lily complained from her room. "Sorry, sweetie, I was just checking that your mum remembered to turn off her work computers. You know how she forgets sometimes." Emma's blood went cold. She hadn't forgotten anything. Her computers were programmed to auto-lock after 15 minutes of inactivity. Sarah had no reason to check on them, and certainly no reason to mention Emma's supposed forgetfulness to a 6-year-old. She climbed the stairs with practiced silence, a skill that had served her well during surveillance operations. The hardwood floors of the Victorian home could betray any misstep, but Emma knew exactly where to place her feet to avoid the creaks. Lily's door was open, revealing Sarah sitting on the edge of the bed with a picture book in her lap. She wore the same outfit she'd had on all day, dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that somehow never seemed to wrinkle or collect pet hair, despite hours of play with Lily. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her makeup remained perfect even after a full day of childcare. Too perfect, Emma's trained mind noted. Real nannies looked frazzled by bedtime. And then the princess found out that her sister had been living in the forest all along, Sarah continued, her voice taking on a strange intensity. The sister who had been forgotten by their father, left behind while the princess got everything she ever wanted. Emma frowned. That wasn't how The Princess and the Pauper ended. She'd read that book to Lily dozens of times. That's not right, Lily protested. The Princess and the Pauper become friends and share the kingdom. Nobody gets left behind. Sarah's smile never wavered, but Emma caught the subtle tightening around her eyes. Sometimes stories have different endings than the ones in books, sweetheart. Sometimes the forgotten sister has to take what should have been hers all along. The words hit Emma like ice water. Every instinct she'd suppressed over the past 18 months screamed to attention. This wasn't about bedtime stories or childcare. This was about something deeper, something personal. She retreated to her office and immediately pulled up Sarah's background check on her computer. Prestige Childcare Services had provided a comprehensive report. Sarah Elizabeth Chen, born in Portland, Oregon. Parents deceased. Graduated from University of Washington with honors. Previous employment with the Morrison family, 2018-2020. The Blackwood family, 2020-2022. And the Stevenson family, 2022-2024. Clean criminal background check. Stellar references. But Emma's FBI training had taught her to look beyond the surface. She opened a secure browser and began cross-referencing the information, starting with the families who had supposedly employed Sarah previously. The Morrison family had moved to Switzerland in 2019, according to their social media profiles. But Sarah's employment record showed she'd worked for them through 2020. The Blackwoods had divorced acrimoniously in 2021, with custody battles that were public record. Neither parent had ever mentioned employing a nanny named Sarah Chen. Emma's fingers flew across the keyboard, her investigative skills returning like muscle memory. The University of Washington had no record of a Sarah Elizabeth Chen graduating with a degree in early childhood development in the years specified. The Oregon birth certificate existed, but the social security number associated with it belonged to someone who had died in foster care at age 12. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Sarah Chen, their perfect nanny, didn't exist. Upstairs, she could hear Sarah's voice continuing the bastardized fairy tale, weaving themes of abandonment and revenge into what should have been a comforting bedtime story. Lily's responses grew quieter, more subdued. Whatever Sarah was saying, it was affecting her daughter in ways that set every maternal instinct on fire. Emma reached for her phone to call Marcus Rivera, her former FBI partner, who now worked Seattle PD homicide. But before she could dial, she heard something that made her blood freeze. "You know, Lily, your mommy has been very sad lately. Sometimes when mommies are too sad, they can't take care of their little girls anymore. But don't worry, I'll always be here to take care of you." The manipulation was subtle, but unmistakable. Sarah was already beginning the psychological groundwork to separate Lily from her mother. The question was why? What did this woman want with her family? What had Emma done to earn this level of calculated infiltration? She thought back to her FBI cases, scanning through years of investigations for any connection to a Sarah Chen or anyone who might have reason to target her specifically. The cases blurred together. White-collar crime, organized fraud, kidnapping investigations. But one case stood out, the one that had broken her, the disappearance of a 12-year-old girl from a Seattle area foster home. The girl had vanished without a trace, despite Emma's team conducting one of the most thorough investigations in bureau history. The girl's name had been Sarah Chen. Emma's hands trembled as she accessed the archived case files from her secure FBI database account. The photos loaded slowly, and when the missing child's face appeared on screen, Emma's world tilted on its axis. The bone structure was similar, the eyes were the same dark brown. But this Sarah Chen had died in 2008, her body found 2 years after her disappearance in a shallow grave outside Tacoma. The case had haunted Emma for years. Not just because it remained unsolved, but because something about the girl's face had seemed familiar in a way she could never explain. Now she knew why. Looking at the death certificate, Emma saw something that made her stomach drop. Under next of kin, the form listed an emergency contact, Patricia Hayes, maternal aunt. Emma's mother was named Patricia Hayes. She had never mentioned having a sister, never spoken of any relatives beyond Emma's father, but the dates aligned with a period of Emma's childhood when her mother had been absent for several months, claiming she was caring for a sick relative. Had her mother been lying? Had Emma had a half-sister she never knew about? And if so, who was the woman upstairs with her daughter right now? The floorboards above creaked again, and this time Emma was certain she heard the sound of her bedroom door opening and closing. Sarah was moving through the house freely now, exploring areas she had no business entering. Emma grabbed her service weapon from the locked drawer of her desk, a Glock 19 she'd carried during her bureau days and was still licensed to own. She checked the magazine and chambered around with practiced efficiency. Whatever was happening in her house, whoever this woman really was, Emma's training was taking over. The hypervigilant federal agent was emerging from the shadow of the traumatized ex-cop who had been afraid to trust her own instincts. She climbed the stairs again, weapon drawn but concealed behind her back. Lily's room was empty now, the bedtime story apparently finished. Emma could hear water running in the master bathroom, her bathroom. Sarah was taking a shower as if she belonged there. The audacity of it was staggering. The woman had been in Emma's home for 6 weeks, gaining trust, learning routines, mapping vulnerabilities. And now she was comfortable enough to use Emma's personal shower while Emma was in the house. This wasn't random. This was planned, methodical, and deeply personal. Someone had sent this imposter into Emma's life for a reason, and that reason centered around a dead girl named Sarah Chen and a family connection Emma had never known existed. As the shower continued running upstairs, Emma retreated to her office and began documenting everything. If she was going to survive whatever was coming, she would need evidence, documentation, and most importantly, she would need to think like the federal agent she used to be, rather than the broken woman she had become. The game had begun, and Emma Hayes was going to play by rules her enemy didn't know existed. Emma's fingers moved across the keyboard with the mechanical precision of someone who had spent years building airtight cases. The shower was still running upstairs. Sarah had been in there for 23 minutes now, an unusually long time for someone who supposedly lived in a studio apartment across town. Another small detail that didn't fit the carefully constructed narrative. She opened a new encrypted file and began documenting everything. Times, dates, inconsistencies in Sarah's story, and most importantly, the security footage from her home system. Emma had installed the cameras after her divorce, partly for security and partly because her FBI training had made her acutely aware of how vulnerable a single mother could be. The footage told a disturbing story. Over the past 6 weeks, Sarah had arrived early and stayed late on 17 occasions. She had accessed rooms she shouldn't have entered, the master bedroom, Emma's office, even the basement storage area where Emma kept archived case files. On 3 separate occasions, the cameras had captured Sarah taking photographs of documents with her personal cell phone. But the most damning evidence was what Emma found when she cross-referenced Sarah's arrival and departure times with her own schedule. The woman had somehow known exactly when Emma would be on client calls, when she'd be grocery shopping, when she'd be distracted. That level of surveillance required planning that went back months, possibly years. Emma pulled up her home security system's historical logs and felt her blood chill. Someone had been conducting reconnaissance on her house long before she'd ever posted the nanny position. Motion sensors in her backyard had triggered alerts dating back 8 months, always at night, always when Emma and Lily were asleep. The alerts had been brief, easily dismissed as raccoons or neighborhood cats. But now Emma could see the pattern. The reconnaissance had been methodical, professional. Someone had been mapping her property, learning her routines, identifying vulnerabilities in her security system. The nanny position hadn't been an opportunity. It had been the end game of a long-term operation. She accessed the archived files from the Sarah Chen missing child case, her heart pounding as she read through witness statements and forensic reports. The real Sarah Chen had been placed in foster care after her mother died of a drug overdose. The girl's emergency contact, Patricia Hayes, had visited twice before disappearing herself. Social services had lost track of Patricia Hayes entirely after 2008, the same year Sarah Chen's body was found. Emma stared at her mother's maiden name in the digital file. Patricia Hayes had been Emma's mother, but Emma's mother was alive and well, living in a retirement community in Phoenix. They spoke every Sunday, had dinner together whenever Emma visited Arizona. Her mother had never mentioned a sister, never spoken of foster children or family tragedies, unless she'd been lying for 34 years. Emma grabbed her phone and scrolled to her mother's contact. It was past midnight in Phoenix, but this couldn't wait. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Mom, it's Emma. I need you to call me back immediately. It's about Sarah Chen and why you never told me I had a sister." The shower upstairs had finally stopped. Emma saved her work and locked her computer, slipping the Glock into the waistband of her jeans. She needed to act normal until she could gather more evidence and contact Marcus. But first, she needed to check on Lily. Her daughter was sleeping peacefully, her stuffed elephant clutched tight against her chest. Emma knelt beside the bed and gently brushed Lily's hair back from her forehead. Whatever was happening, whoever this imposter was, Emma would not let her daughter become collateral damage. "Sweet dreams, baby," she whispered, then quietly closed the bedroom door. Sarah emerged from the master bathroom wearing one of Emma's robes, a burgundy silk robe that had been a gift from David during better times. The sight of this stranger in her most intimate clothing was so jarring that Emma had to grip the doorframe to steady herself. "Oh, Emma, I'm so sorry," Sarah said, not looking sorry at all. "I spilled juice on my clothes when Lily knocked over her cup during story time. I hope you don't mind. I just needed to rinse off, and I found this robe in your closet. I'll replace it, of course." Emma's FBI training kicked in. She catalogued every detail. Sarah's body language was confident rather than apologetic. Her story about spilled juice didn't match. Emma had seen no stains on her clothes earlier. Most telling of all, Sarah had gone straight to Emma's closet and selected the most expensive robe there, as if she already knew where it was. "That's fine," Emma said, her voice level. "Though I'm curious how you knew which closet to look in. The guest bathroom has towels and a spare robe." For just a moment, Sarah's composure cracked. A micro-expression of panic flashed across her features before the pleasant mask returned. "I was looking for cleaning supplies to take care of the juice stain upstairs. Your room was closer, and I was worried about dripping on your beautiful floors." Another lie. Emma's bedroom was upstairs, same level as Lily's room. There was no reason to go there looking for cleaning supplies when the hall closet was right outside Lily's door. "I see," Emma said. "Well, let me get you something to wear home. I think we have some clothes in Lost and Found from previous babysitters." "That's sweet of you, but I actually brought a change of clothes. They're in my car." Sarah moved past Emma toward the stairs, trailing the scent of Emma's own shower gel and shampoo. "I should get going anyway. Early morning tomorrow. I'm taking Lily to that new children's museum you mentioned." Emma had never mentioned a children's museum. In fact, she'd been planning to take Lily there herself this weekend as a special treat. Another small violation, another boundary crossed. "Actually, I think I'll take her myself this weekend. Family time, you know." Sarah stopped at the top of the stairs, her hand gripping the banister. When she turned around, her expression had shifted subtly. The pleasant nanny facade was still there, but underneath it lurked something cold and possessive. "Of course," she said, though Lily was so excited when I mentioned it. She even picked out what she wants to wear. I'd hate to disappoint her. The manipulation was skilled, but recognizable. Sarah was implying that cancelling the museum trip would hurt Lily, positioning herself as the one who understood the child's needs while painting Emma as the disappointing parent. It was textbook alienation behavior, the kind family court psychologists warned about during custody disputes. "I'm sure she'll understand," Emma replied. "Children adapt quickly when their parents make decisions. It's one of the things that makes them resilient." Sarah's smile became razor thin. "Yes, They do adapt. Sometimes they adapt so well that they barely remember the before times, especially when the before times were unstable. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Sarah was suggesting that Lily might be better off forgetting her life with Emma, that Emma's parenting was somehow inadequate or damaging. It was psychological warfare disguised as casual conversation. Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced down and saw Marcus Rivera's name. Working late tonight. Caught a weird case. Rich family in Bellevue. Nanny disappeared. Parents found dead. Coffee tomorrow to discuss. Emma's blood turned to ice. She looked up to find Sarah watching her with intense interest, reading her expression the way a predator reads prey. "Everything all right?" Sarah asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just work," Emma managed. "A client needs some information updated." But her mind was racing. Marcus had mentioned a missing nanny and dead parents. Was this connected to Sarah? Had there been other families? Other victims of whatever elaborate scheme was unfolding? Sarah descended the stairs with fluid grace, completely comfortable in Emma's home, despite wearing stolen clothes and having violated multiple boundaries. She moved through the living room like she owned it, trailing her fingers across surfaces, straightening picture frames, making tiny adjustments that marked her territory. "I left my purse in the kitchen," she said, heading toward the back of the house. Emma followed, every nerve-ending alert. The kitchen looked exactly as she'd left it after dinner, but something felt off. The magnetic notepad on the refrigerator had been moved. The coffee maker was angled differently, small changes that most people wouldn't notice, but that screamed violation to someone with Emma's training. Sarah retrieved a designer handbag from the counter. Expensive leather, the kind that cost more than most nannies made in a month. Another inconsistency to file away. "Oh, before I forget," Sarah said, pulling out her phone. "Lily mentioned that you've been having trouble sleeping lately. She said she hears you walking around the house at night, checking locks multiple times. I know a wonderful therapist who specializes in post-traumatic stress. I could give you her number." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Lily had never mentioned anything about sleep troubles because Emma didn't have sleep troubles. Not anymore. The only person who would know about her nighttime security checks would be someone who had been watching the house, someone who could see her moving through rooms lit by the blue glow of security monitors. "That's thoughtful," Emma said carefully, "but I'm not sure what gave Lily that impression. I sleep fine." "Children notice more than we think," Sarah replied, her smile never wavering. "They're very perceptive about their parents' emotional states. Sometimes they worry when they shouldn't have to." Another manipulation, another subtle suggestion that Emma was burdening her daughter with adult anxieties. But now Emma could see the pattern clearly. Sarah wasn't just trying to replace her. She was systematically undermining Emma's confidence while positioning herself as the stable alternative. "I'll keep that in mind," Emma said. "Drive safely getting home." Sarah paused at the kitchen door, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Emma, I've been thinking, this house is so large for just the two of you. All these rooms, all these stairs. And with your work keeping you so busy, Lily spends a lot of time alone up in her room. It might be healthier for her to live somewhere more contained, more supervised." "Lily is never unsupervised," Emma said, her voice harder now. "Of course not. I just meant, well, children Lily's age need constant attention. They can get into trouble so quickly when their guardians are distracted by other things, work, personal problems, mental health struggles." The threat was becoming more explicit. Sarah was building a case for why Lily would be better off elsewhere, planting seeds that could later bloom into custody challenges or even child protection interventions. Emma walked Sarah to the front door, maintaining the pretense of normalcy while her mind catalogued every word, every gesture, every micro-expression that betrayed the predator beneath the nanny's pleasant facade. "Same time tomorrow?" Sarah asked, slipping on a pair of expensive boots that definitely hadn't been in her car earlier. "Actually, I think we'll be fine tomorrow. Lily has a doctor's appointment and I'll probably work from the pediatrician's office. Oh? Sarah's eyes sharpened. Nothing serious, I hope. Just a routine checkup. You know how doctors like to stay on schedule with vaccinations. It was a test. Lily wasn't due for any vaccinations. Her next appointment wasn't for 3 months. If Sarah was as invested in Lily's care as she claimed, she would know this. Of course, Sarah said smoothly. I'll just plan to see you both Friday then, unless you need me before then. I'm always available for you and Lily. She stepped out into the Seattle drizzle, pulling up the hood of a jacket that had definitely been in her mysterious car stash of clothing. Emma watched through the peephole as Sarah walked to a dark sedan parked 3 houses down. Not where a legitimate nanny would park, but in a position that offered clear sight lines to Emma's front door and most of the windows. Emma locked the door and immediately activated every security system in the house. Then she returned to her office and began the most important investigation of her career. She had 48 hours to figure out who Sarah really was, what she wanted, and how to stop her before whatever plan was in motion reached its conclusion. Because one thing was certain, this woman hadn't spent months infiltrating Emma's life just to steal robes and manipulate bedtime stories. She was building toward something bigger, something that would end with Emma out of the picture and Lily in Sarah's permanent custody. The real question was whether Emma could gather enough evidence to expose the truth before Sarah made her final move. If you're still reading this, drop a comment below about what caught your attention the most so far. Was it Sarah's perfect appearance that never got messy? The way she knew exactly where to find Emma's expensive robe? Or maybe how she mentioned that children's museum Emma never talked about? I'd love to hear what made your detective instincts kick in. Emma worked through the night, her former FBI training taking over as she built what would become the most important case of her life. By 6 a.m., she had compiled a dossier that would have impressed her old supervisors. Financial records, surveillance footage, background checks, and a timeline that painted a picture of methodical stalking spanning nearly a year. The coffee maker gurgled to life as Emma heard Lily's feet hit the floor upstairs. Normal morning sounds in a house that no longer felt safe. She slipped the printed evidence into a manila folder and tucked it into her laptop bag. Today, she would need to maintain the facade of normalcy while setting a trap that would expose Sarah's true identity. "Morning, Mummy," Lily said, padding into the kitchen in her favorite pajamas, purple with unicorns. "Is Miss Sarah coming today?" Emma's heart clenched. Even asking the question, Lily's face lit up with anticipation. Whatever Sarah's game was, she had successfully bonded with a vulnerable child who was still processing her parents' divorce. "Not today, sweetheart. I thought we could have a mommy-daughter day instead." Lily's face fell slightly. "But Miss Sarah was going to show me how to braid friendship bracelets. She said she learned when she was little and didn't have many friends." Emma's blood chilled. Sarah was sharing personal details designed to create emotional connection. The classic manipulation technique of manufactured vulnerability. She was positioning herself as someone who understood loneliness, making Lily feel special for being chosen as a friend. "We can learn to make friendship bracelets together," Emma said, pouring cereal into Lily's favorite bowl. "Maybe we can make one for Miss Sarah." "Really?" Lily's eyes brightened. "She'll love that. She said yellow is her favorite color because it reminds her of sunshine. And she didn't see much sunshine when she was growing up. More personal details, more emotional manipulation. Sarah was weaving a narrative of childhood trauma designed to elicit sympathy and create protective instincts in a 6-year-old. The sophistication of the psychological grooming was breathtaking and terrifying. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you slept well. Lily left her favorite book in my car yesterday. I'll drop it by around lunch. S. 2 lies in one text." Lily hadn't left any book, and Sarah didn't have Emma's personal cell phone number. She had only been given the house phone, which meant she had obtained Emma's number through other means. Emma screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Marcus with a note. Need to meet ASAP. The nanny situation is connected to your missing persons case. His response came within minutes. Can you be at the precinct by 10? Bringing someone you need to meet. After dropping Lily at school, Emma drove to the Seattle Police Department downtown, the manila folder of evidence clutched in her passenger seat. The morning drizzle had intensified into a steady rain, turning the city grey and ominous. She felt like she was driving toward a confrontation that had been building for months, possibly years. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, his familiar face showing the stress lines that came with homicide work. Beside him stood a woman Emma didn't recognize, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, wearing the kind of practical suit that screamed federal agent. "Emma, this is Detective Sarah Kim from Portland PD," Marcus said. "She's been working a case that intersects with ours." "Not Sarah," the woman said, extending her hand. "Call me Detective Kim, and you're the behavioral analyst Marcus mentioned. We need to talk." They commandeered a conference room, and Emma spread her evidence across the table like a war council planning an attack. Marcus whistled low as he examined the surveillance photos. "This is professional-grade stalking," he said. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 8 months of reconnaissance, 6 weeks of active infiltration," Emma replied. "But I think it goes back further." "Detective Kim, Marcus mentioned you're working a connected case." Kim opened her laptop and turned it toward Emma. 3 families in the Portland area, all wealthy, all hired nannies through exclusive agencies. In each case, the nanny disappeared right before or after a family tragedy. The Hendersons died in a car accident after their nanny quit suddenly. The Yamadas had a house fire that killed both parents. Nanny was conveniently visiting her sick mother that weekend. The Robinsons are both in psychiatric facilities after simultaneous nervous breakdowns. Their nanny had documented their concerning behavior extensively before they lost custody of their children. Emma's mouth went dry. What happened to the children? Foster care initially, but in each case the former nanny applied to become a licensed foster parent and eventually adopted them. Legal, above board, with character references and documentation showing she was the only stable figure in the children's lives. "Jesus Christ," Marcus muttered. "She's been murdering parents to steal their kids?" "We can't prove murder," Kim said carefully, "but we can prove fraud. The nanny used different names for each family: Sarah Martinez, Sarah Johnson, Sarah Chen, but they're all the same person. Facial recognition software confirmed it last week." Emma's hands trembled as she opened her own folder. "She's using the identity of a dead girl. The real Sarah Chen died in foster care in 2008. I worked that case when I was FBI. But here's what I didn't know until last night. The victim was my half-sister." Both detectives stared at her. Kim leaned forward, her expression intense. "Your half-sister?" "My mother was listed as her emergency contact, Patricia Hayes. But my mother never told me I had a sister, never mentioned foster care or family tragedies. I think my mother might have been the one who abandoned Sarah Chen in the first place." Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "So this woman, whoever she really is targeting you specifically. This isn't random. She's recreating some twisted version of your family history." Emma's phone rang. Sarah's number. She looked at the detectives, who nodded grimly. "Put it on speaker," Kim instructed. "Hi, Sarah," Emma answered, her voice steady. "Emma, I'm so glad I caught you. I'm at your house with Lily's book, but no one's answering the door. I used the spare key you showed me to make sure everything was okay inside." Emma's blood turned to ice. She had never shown Sarah a spare key because there wasn't one, which meant Sarah had made her own. "I'm running errands," Emma said. "Lily's at school." "Oh, of course. Well, I'm already inside, so I'll just tidy up a bit while I'm here. Your coffee pot was left on. Fire hazard, you know. And I noticed some of your case files were scattered around your office. I'll organize those for you too." The threat was clear. Sarah was inside Emma's house, going through her files, establishing her presence in Emma's most private spaces. She was making it clear that locks and boundaries meant nothing to her. "That's not necessary," Emma said. "I'll be home soon." Take your time. I actually wanted to cook lunch for you. I stopped at the grocery store and picked up ingredients for Lily's favorite meal. I know how busy you've been with work. You deserve to be taken care of for once. Kim was frantically typing on her laptop, coordinating with dispatch. Marcus was already on his radio calling for units to respond to Emma's address. "Sarah," Emma said carefully, "I need you to leave my house now. We can talk when I get home." Ooh, the pause on the other end was loaded with meaning. When Sarah spoke again, her voice had changed completely. The sweet nanny facade had evaporated, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I don't think you understand, Emma. This is my home now. These are my things. That beautiful little girl upstairs is my daughter now. You've been playing house, but the real family is finally coming together." "Lily's at school," Emma said, her heart hammering. "No, she's not. I picked her up early, told them you had a family emergency. She's upstairs in her room right now, playing with the toys I bought her. Don't worry, she's perfectly safe as long as you're reasonable." Marcus was already moving toward the door, his hand on his weapon. Kim grabbed her radio. "All units, we have a 207A in progress, child in immediate danger, 12 and 47 Maple Street. Suspect is armed and extremely dangerous." "Sarah," Emma said, fighting to keep her voice level, "let me talk to Lily. She's busy right now, but she wanted me to tell you that she's excited about our new life together. She said she's tired of seeing you so sad all the time. Children are very perceptive about their parents' emotional states, don't you think?" The line went dead. Emma was already running toward the parking garage, Marcus and Kim flanking her. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, but the picture they formed was more terrifying than anything she had imagined. Sarah, whoever she really was, hadn't just infiltrated Emma's life. She had been systematically destroying other families for years, collecting children like trophies. And now she had Lily. The drive across Seattle took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Police units were already surrounding Emma's house when they arrived, but the scene was eerily quiet. No movement in the windows, no sign of the confrontation Emma had expected. "Suspect vehicle is the dark sedan parked 3 houses down," Kim reported into her radio. "Washington plates, registered to a Sarah Martinez in Portland, one of her aliases." Emma approached the front door with Marcus, her service weapon drawn. The house felt wrong, not just violated, but transformed. Someone else's presence permeated the space, marking territory that had been claimed through violence. "Seattle police," Marcus called out. "Building is surrounded. Come out with your hands visible." The response came from upstairs, not Sarah's voice, but Lily's, high and frightened. "Mommy, Miss Sarah says you're here to take me away from her. She says you don't want me anymore." Emma's heart shattered. Even now, even with police surrounding the house, Sarah was manipulating a terrified 6-year-old, turning her against her own mother. "I'm coming up, baby," Emma called back. "Everything's going to be okay." But as she climbed the stairs toward her daughter's voice, Emma knew that nothing would ever be okay again. Sarah had crossed every line, violated every boundary, and turned Emma's own child into a weapon against her. The confrontation was just beginning. The tension is building. If you're invested in this story, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more psychological thrillers. Your engagement helps us bring you more content like this. The tactical team moved into position with practiced precision, their black-clad figures spreading across Emma's front yard like shadows against the grey Seattle morning. Detective Kim coordinated from the command vehicle, while Marcus positioned himself at Emma's shoulder, both weapons drawn as they approached the front door. "Suspect has barricaded herself in the child's bedroom," came the voice through Kim's earpiece. "Thermal imaging shows 2 heat signatures, both stationary. No movement toward windows or alternate exits." Emma's training warred with her maternal instincts. Every fiber of her being screamed to charge upstairs and protect her daughter, but her FBI experience knew that rash action could get Lily killed. Sarah had orchestrated this confrontation deliberately. She wanted Emma here, wanted the police here. This was part of her plan. "She's too calm," Emma murmured to Marcus. A normal person would be panicking right now, making demands, trying to negotiate. But she called me here. She wants this to happen. Marcus nodded grimly. What's her endgame? Before Emma could answer, Sarah's voice drifted down from upstairs, not shouting or frantic, but conversational, as if she were discussing the weather. Emma, I know you're down there with your police friends. Why don't you come up? We need to have a family discussion. Ma'am, this is Detective Rivera with Seattle PD, Marcus called back. We need you to release the child and come out with your hands visible. Sarah's laugh was light, almost musical. Detective, I'm not holding anyone. Lily is here because she wants to be here. She's my daughter now. Emma, tell them about the custody arrangement we discussed. Emma's blood chilled. There was no custody arrangement, but Sarah was creating a narrative for the authorities, suggesting this was a domestic dispute rather than a kidnapping. There is no arrangement, Emma called back. You have no legal right to my daughter. Oh, but I do, Sarah replied, her voice carrying that same unsettling sweetness she'd used during bedtime stories. I have documentation, Emma. Medical records showing your ongoing psychological instability. School reports noting Lily's concerns about your behavior. Even audio recordings of you threatening me. Kim grabbed Emma's arm. What is she talking about? She's lying, Emma said, but doubt crept in. Sarah had been in her house for 6 weeks, had access to everything. What kind of evidence had she manufactured? I'm sending down some paperwork, Sarah continued. Lily is going to bring it to you. She's such a good helper. The sound of a door opening upstairs was followed by small footsteps on the hardwood floor. Emma's heart clenched as Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching a manila envelope to her chest. Her daughter looked confused and frightened, but not physically harmed. Mommy, Lily's voice was small. Miss Sarah says you're sick and need to go to the doctor. She says I have to stay with her until you get better. Emma holstered her weapon and stepped forward, but Marcus caught her arm. Could be a trap, he warned. She's 6 years old, Emma replied, pulling free. She approached the staircase slowly, hands visible, making eye contact with her daughter. Hi, baby. I'm not sick. Miss Sarah is confused about some things. Lily descended a few steps, her bare feet silent on the wood. But she showed me papers that say you are. Dr. Papers. And she played recordings of you saying mean things about her. The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. Sarah had created false documentation and edited audio to convince a child that her own mother was dangerous. She had weaponized Lily's trust and natural desire to help. Can you bring me those papers, sweetheart? Emma asked gently. Lily nodded and continued down the stairs, but stopped halfway as Sarah's voice floated down from above. Lily, remember what we discussed about strangers who try to take you away from people who love you, even if they look like someone you used to know? The psychological terrorism was exquisite. Sarah was implying that Emma, Lily's own mother, was now a stranger, a threat to be feared rather than trusted. I'm your mommy, Lily, Emma said firmly. I've been your mommy since the day you were born. Miss Sarah is confused and scared, but she's not thinking clearly. Lily's face scrunched in concentration, the expression she wore when working through complex problems. 6-year-olds were remarkably perceptive, and despite Sarah's manipulation, Lily's fundamental attachment to her mother remained strong. She handed Emma the envelope and whispered, Mommy, Miss Sarah has been saying scary things about forgetting and being replaced. I don't want to forget you. Emma's heart broke, even as relief flooded through her. You'll never forget me, baby. I promise. She opened the envelope while Marcus called for the negotiation team. Inside were documents that made Emma's blood run cold. Falsified medical records suggesting bipolar disorder and violent tendencies, edited transcripts of therapy sessions that had never occurred, and most damaging of all, photographs of Emma's office that had been staged to look chaotic and obsessive. This is sophisticated, Kim observed, studying the papers over Emma's shoulder. Professional-grade document forgery probably cost thousands of dollars. She's been planning this for a long time. Emma flipped through the pages, recognizing Sarah's thoroughness. Every document was designed to build a case for Emma's unfitness as a parent, while positioning Sarah as the concerned caregiver who had documented dangerous behavior. If this had gone to family court without the context of criminal investigation, Sarah might have won. "Ma'am, this is Sergeant Davis with the crisis negotiation team," a new voice called from outside. "We'd like to establish communication and work toward a peaceful resolution." Sarah's response was immediate and telling. "I don't need to negotiate. I have legal custody of my daughter, and I have documentation proving the biological mother is mentally unstable. Check your records. I filed the appropriate paperwork with Child Protective Services 3 days ago. Kim was already on her radio, coordinating with CPS. If she filed false reports, that's another felony charge. But it also means she's been setting legal traps in addition to the psychological manipulation." Emma studied the staircase, calculating angles and risks. Sarah was most likely positioned in Lily's bedroom, which had one window overlooking the backyard. The room shared a wall with the master bedroom, where Emma knew the layout intimately. "I need to get into the house," Emma told Marcus. "There's a way to reach Lily's room without going up the main staircase." "Absolutely not," Marcus replied. "You're emotionally compromised, and this suspect has been planning specifically to target you." "Which is exactly why I'm the only one who can end this," Emma countered. "She wants me. This whole elaborate scheme has been about getting my attention, proving she's superior, taking what she thinks belongs to her. If I don't engage, she'll escalate." As if on cue, Sarah's voice drifted down again, but now it was directed at Lily rather than the authorities below. "Sweetheart, I need you to understand something very important. The woman downstairs looks like your mommy, but she's not really your mommy anymore. Sometimes when people get very sick in their minds, they become different people, dangerous people." "That's not true." Lily's voice was getting more distressed. "That's my real mommy! You're being mean!" The sound of a struggle upstairs made every officer tense. Sarah was physically restraining Lily now, her patience with manipulation finally reaching its limit. "Ma'am, we need you to release the child immediately," Sergeant Davis called out, his voice harder now. "She's my child," Sarah screamed back, her careful facade finally cracking. "I've been waiting for her my whole life. Emma had everything handed to her, the perfect family, the perfect career, the perfect life, while I had nothing. While my real sister died forgotten in foster care because your precious Emma couldn't solve one simple case. The truth finally emerged, raw and venomous. Sarah wasn't Emma's sister. She was someone who had become obsessed with the real Sarah Chen's story, someone who blamed Emma for failing to save a child who was already dead. "Sarah," Emma called up, her voice carrying the authority of her former federal training. "You're right. I failed your sister. I couldn't save Sarah Chen, and that failure has haunted me every day since. But taking Lily won't bring your sister back." "Shut up!" The response was pure rage now, the calculated manipulator replaced by someone whose careful plans were unraveling. "You don't get to talk about my sister. You gave up on her. You let them bury her in an unmarked grave while you got promoted and got married and had the perfect daughter." Emma was already moving toward the back of the house, gesturing for Marcus to keep Sarah talking. The basement access led to a utility corridor that connected to the master bedroom, a route Sarah wouldn't expect because it required knowledge of the house's original Victorian-era servant passages. "Tell me about your sister," Marcus called up, taking Emma's cue. "Help us understand what happened." As Sarah began a rambling, pain-filled monologue about the real Sarah Chen's life and death, Emma slipped through the basement door and into the narrow passage that ran between the old walls. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kim. "Backup plan in motion. Keep her talking for 5 more minutes." Emma emerged in her walk-in closet and could hear Sarah's voice clearly now, just on the other side of the bedroom wall. She was talking about foster homes and abandonment, about watching Emma's career from afar and planning the perfect revenge. But beneath the words, Emma could hear something else, Lily crying softly, the sound muffled as if she was being held against her will. The maternal rage that flooded through Emma was unlike anything she'd experienced. This woman had terrorized her child, violated her home, and constructed an elaborate psychological torture chamber around both of them. But Emma was no longer the broken ex-agent who doubted her own instincts. She was a mother protecting her cub, and she had every tool of her former profession at her disposal. The confrontation was about to become very personal. Emma pressed herself against the bedroom wall, listening to Sarah's increasingly unhinged monologue through the thin Victorian-era plaster. The woman's voice had lost all pretense of control, cycling between rage and grief as she recounted a twisted narrative of abandonment and revenge. "She was so small when they found her body," Sarah was saying, her voice thick with tears that sounded genuine. 12 years old, Emma. 12, and you just moved on to the next case like she never mattered." Emma's phone vibrated with a text from Kim. "Audio surveillance in position, recording everything, keep her talking." Through the wall, Emma could hear Lily's muffled whimpers. Her daughter was terrified but trying to be brave, probably the way the real Sarah Chen had tried to be brave in those final moments before her death. The parallel wasn't lost on Emma, and it filled her with a cold, focused rage. "I didn't move on," Emma called through the wall, her voice carrying clearly into Lily's room. "I think about Sarah Chen every single day. Her case file is still on my desk downstairs. I never stopped looking for answers." "Liar!" Sarah screamed. "You closed the case. You declared her a runaway and let them bury her like she was nothing." Emma's training kicked in. Sarah was projecting, creating a false narrative to justify her actions. But the emotional pain underneath was real. This woman had genuinely loved the dead girl, had built her entire identity around avenging someone she'd probably never actually met. "Who was she to you?" Emma asked gently. "The real Sarah Chen. How did you know her?" The silence stretched long enough that Emma worried Sarah might have realized she was being recorded. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "She was supposed to be my family too. We were in the same group home for 3 months before she disappeared. She was kind to me, protected me from the older kids, and when she vanished, I knew something terrible had happened. But nobody listened to me. I was just another throwaway kid." Emma closed her eyes, the pieces finally clicking into place. Sarah wasn't Emma's sister. She was a fellow foster child who had bonded with the real Sarah Chen. When the girl disappeared, this woman had fixated on the case, on Emma's investigation, building an elaborate fantasy where she was the dead girl's sister seeking justice. "What's your real name?" Emma asked. Another long pause. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was different, younger, more vulnerable. "Rebecca Walsh, but I stopped being Rebecca a long time ago. Rebecca was weak. Rebecca couldn't protect anyone. Sarah could fix things." Downstairs, Emma could hear the tactical team moving into position. Kim's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Psych evaluation suggests severe dissociative identity disorder. She genuinely believes she is Sarah Chen. Approach with extreme caution." Emma understood now why Sarah's plan had been so elaborate, so personal. Rebecca Walsh had spent years studying Emma's life, learning her weaknesses, crafting the perfect revenge against the FBI agent who had failed her foster sister. She had stolen the dead girl's identity not just for practical purposes, but because she truly believed she had become Sarah Chen. "Rebecca," Emma said, deliberately using the real name. "Sarah Chen wouldn't want you to hurt an innocent child. She protected you, right? She wouldn't want you to become someone who terrorizes children." "Don't!" The scream was followed by the sound of furniture being overturned. "Don't you dare tell me what she would want. You never knew her. You let her die." Emma heard Lily cry out and moved toward the door connecting her bedroom to her daughter's room. But as she reached for the handle, Sarah's voice stopped her cold. "I have a gun pointed at Lily's head right now, Emma. If anyone comes through that door, she dies. If anyone tries to break down the main door, she dies. You have failed to save one child already. Don't make it two. The threat was delivered in a voice that had gone completely flat, the tone of someone who had moved beyond rational thought into pure survival mode. Emma's blood turned to ice as she realized Rebecca had escalated to the final phase of her plan. "Rebecca, put the gun down," Emma said, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "Lily is innocent. She's the same age Sarah Chen was when she died. Don't make another child suffer." "She's not suffering," Rebecca snapped. "She's loved. I've spent 6 weeks loving her more than you ever did, feeding her, reading to her, protecting her from your neglect and your crazy behavior." Emma's earpiece crackled again. "Negotiator en route. ETA 2 minutes. Maintain communication but do not attempt entry." But Emma knew they didn't have 2 minutes. Rebecca was spiraling rapidly, her grip on reality weakening as the fantasy she'd constructed collapsed. Soon, she would either surrender completely to delusion or lash out violently at the perceived source of her pain. "You're right," Emma said, making a calculated decision. "You have been loving to Lily. She talks about you constantly. The stories you tell, the games you play, the way you braid her hair. She cares about you, Rebecca." "Sarah," came the automatic correction. "My name is Sarah." "Sarah, then. Lily cares about Sarah. And Sarah cares about Lily, right? You want to protect her." "Of course I do. She's my daughter now." Emma moved closer to the connecting door, her hand resting lightly on the handle. "Then help me understand something. In your research about my family, you learned about my divorce, my custody battle. You know my ex-husband has been trying to prove I'm an unfit mother." "He's right," Rebecca said venomously. "You are unfit. You're damaged goods, Emma. Broken. Lily deserves better." "Maybe," Emma agreed, playing to Rebecca's delusions. "But if something happens to me today, if I die or get arrested, who gets custody of Lily? It won't be you, Rebecca. It will be David. My ex-husband will take her to California, and you'll never see her again." The silence was deafening. Emma could practically hear Rebecca's mind working, trying to process this flaw in her perfect plan. "You're lying," Rebecca said finally, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "Check the custody documents yourself. They're in the divorce papers in my office safe. David gets full custody if anything happens to me. Lily will be gone within 24 hours, and you'll have lost her forever." Emma heard movement in the room. Rebecca was clearly considering this possibility for the first time. The woman had been so focused on eliminating Emma that she hadn't thought through the legal consequences. "Unless," Emma continued carefully, "we work together to make sure Lily stays safe. You know I love her. You know I'd do anything to protect her. Help me make sure David doesn't take her away from both of us." It was a dangerous gambit, appealing to Rebecca's possessiveness while trying to establish common ground. But Emma could hear Lily's crying had stopped, which might mean Rebecca had lowered the gun. "You can't trick me," Rebecca said, but the venom was gone from her voice. "I've planned for everything. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm trying to save my daughter. Our daughter. You've spent 6 weeks caring for her. You know how special she is. Do you really want David to take her away from Seattle, away from everything she knows?" Emma's earpiece buzzed. "Negotiator in position. Maintain current approach." But Emma was already committed to her path. She turned the door handle slowly, hoping the old Victorian hinges wouldn't creak. Through the crack, she could see into Lily's room. Rebecca was sitting on the bed, still holding a small revolver, but it was pointed toward the floor rather than at Lily. Her face was streaked with tears, the carefully constructed mask of Sarah Chen finally collapsing to reveal the broken woman underneath. Lily was curled in the corner of the room, clutching her stuffed elephant, watching Rebecca with wide, frightened eyes. When she saw the door crack open and caught a glimpse of her mother, her face flooded with relief. "Mommy," Lily whispered. Rebecca's head snapped up, the gun rising again, but in that moment Emma could see the truth clearly. This woman didn't want to hurt Lily. She was desperate, delusional, and dangerous, but she genuinely believed she was protecting the child she'd come to love. "Rebecca," Emma said, stepping into the doorway with her hands visible and empty. Let's talk about how we can both protect Lily from David. Because you're right about one thing. She deserves better than what he would give her. The final confrontation was about to begin, and Emma had just bet her daughter's life on her ability to reach the broken woman beneath the stolen identity. Rebecca's eyes darted between Emma and Lily, the gun trembling in her hands as her carefully constructed reality crumbled around her. Emma could see the exact moment when the woman's delusion began to fracture, her face contorting as she tried to reconcile her fantasy of being Sarah Chen with the reality of holding a weapon on a terrified child. "You're not supposed to be here," Rebecca whispered, her voice taking on a childlike quality. "This isn't how it was supposed to happen. Sarah was supposed to get her family back. Sarah was supposed to win." Emma took a careful step into the room, her hands still visible and empty. "Rebecca, look at Lily. Really look at her. She's scared. The real Sarah Chen would never want a child to be scared." "Stop saying that name!" Rebecca screamed, but the gun lowered slightly. "I'm Sarah. I've been Sarah for 5 years. Rebecca was weak and broken, and nobody cared when bad things happened to her." Through her earpiece, Emma heard Kim's voice. "Tactical team in position at all entry points. Say, sunshine, if you need immediate intervention." Emma ignored the instruction, focusing entirely on the shattered woman in front of her. Rebecca's carefully crafted persona was disintegrating in real time, revealing the traumatized foster child underneath. The woman who had spent months planning this elaborate revenge was disappearing, replaced by someone who looked lost and desperate. "You're right," Emma said gently. "Nobody cared about Rebecca. The system failed her just like it failed the real Sarah Chen. But you survived, Rebecca. You found a way to keep going when everything was stacked against you." "I became stronger," Rebecca said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I became someone who could fix things. You became someone who could plan and execute a complex operation that fooled FBI-level background checks," Emma corrected. "That takes incredible intelligence and determination. Rebecca Walsh was never weak. She was a survivor." Lily shifted in the corner, and Rebecca's attention snapped to her. For a moment, Emma saw genuine affection cross the woman's face, the same look she'd worn during those first weeks as their nanny, when her caring for Lily had seemed so authentic. "She does love you," Emma said, recognizing the truth. "Whatever else happened here, your feelings for Lily are real. You've been protecting her in your own way." "I have," Rebecca said fiercely. "I've given her stability and attention and love. I've been the mother she deserves." "I know, and I can see how much she cares about you too. But Rebecca, think about what happens next. If you hurt me, if something happens to Lily, what becomes of that love? What becomes of the good things you've built with her?" Rebecca's face crumpled, years of suppressed emotion finally breaking through. "I just wanted a family. I just wanted to matter to someone. When Sarah died, I thought if I could be her, if I could get justice for her, maybe I could find a place where I belonged." Emma's heart broke for the woman, despite everything she'd put them through. Rebecca Walsh had been another victim of the same broken system that had failed Sarah Chen. Her methods were inexcusable, but her pain was devastatingly real. "You do matter," Emma said. "You've mattered to Lily for 6 weeks. She's going to remember the stories you told her, the games you played, the way you made her feel special. That's real, Rebecca. That's yours, and nobody can take it away." The gun dropped to Rebecca's lap as she began to sob, deep, wrenching sounds that seemed to come from a place of grief she'd been carrying for years. "I miss her so much," Rebecca whispered. "She was the only person who ever made me feel safe. And then she was just gone, like she never existed." "She existed," Emma said firmly. "Sarah Chen existed, and she mattered, and her life had value. But living her identity isn't honoring her memory. It's keeping her trapped. She deserves to rest, Rebecca, and you deserve to live your own life." Through the window, Emma could see tactical officers positioned in the backyard. Rebecca was so lost in her emotional breakdown that she didn't notice, but Emma knew they were running out of time, Soon, someone would make the decision to end this with force, and she couldn't guarantee Lily's safety if that happened. "Rebecca, I need you to give me the gun," Emma said gently. "Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to choose a different ending for this story." Rebecca looked up, her face streaked with tears. "They'll put me in prison. Yes, probably, but you'll still be alive. And someday, when you've gotten help and processed all this pain you've been carrying, maybe you can find a way to honor Sarah Chen's memory that doesn't involve hurting other people." "What about Lily?" Rebecca asked, her voice breaking. "What happens to her?" Emma glanced at her daughter, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes, but no longer looked terrified. Children were remarkably resilient, and Lily seemed to understand that the scary situation was winding down. "Lily is going to be okay," Emma said. "She's going to grow up knowing that sometimes people do bad things for reasons that make sense to them, but that doesn't make the things okay. She's going to remember that you loved her, but she's also going to understand that love doesn't excuse everything." Rebecca nodded slowly, then looked directly at Lily. "I'm sorry I scared you, sweetheart. I never wanted to scare you." "It's okay," Lily said in her small voice. "You were sad about your friend. Sometimes when I'm really sad, I do things that aren't nice too." The simple forgiveness of a 6-year-old seemed to break something fundamental in Rebecca. She carefully placed the gun on the floor and pushed it toward Emma, her movements slow and deliberate. "My real name is Rebecca Marie Walsh," she said clearly. "I stole Sarah Chen's identity because I wanted to be someone who mattered. I'm sorry for what I did to your family." Emma retrieved the weapon and immediately called out, "Suspect is disarmed and surrendering. We need medical and psychiatric support, not tactical intervention." The response was immediate. Within minutes, the room filled with paramedics, crisis counselors, and Detective Kim. Rebecca submitted to arrest without resistance, her breakdown complete. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at Lily one last time. "Read the story about the princess and the pauper the right way," she said. "The way where everyone gets to be happy in the end." Emma gathered Lily into her arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her daughter's strawberry shampoo. The house felt different now, violated but also cleansed, as if Rebecca's confession had exorcised some dark presence that had been lurking in its shadows. "Is Miss Sarah going to jail?" Lily asked. "Yes, baby. She needs help that she can only get in a special hospital. Will you visit her?" Emma was surprised by the question, but she considered it seriously. "Maybe someday, when she's ready. Would you want me to?" Lily nodded gravely. "She was nice to me, mostly. She just got confused about who she was supposed to be, out of the mouths of babes." Emma hugged her daughter tighter, marveling at the child's capacity for both forgiveness and understanding. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face showing the relief of someone who had just watched a dangerous situation resolve without bloodshed. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Emma looked around Lily's room, the overturned furniture, the evidence markers, the lingering sense of violation. Then she looked at her daughter, alive and safe in her arms. "We're going to be okay," she said, and for the first time in 18 months she truly believed it. The investigation would continue. Rebecca would face trial for kidnapping, fraud, stalking, and a dozen other charges. The families in Portland would finally get answers about what had happened to their loved ones. But for now, Emma Hayes was holding her daughter in their home, and the woman who had tried to steal their lives was gone forever. Justice, it turned out, sometimes came with unexpected moments of grace. 3 weeks later, Emma sat in the sterile conference room of the King County Superior Court, watching Rebecca Walsh, no longer pretending to be Sarah Chen, answer questions from a court-appointed psychiatrist. The woman looked smaller now, diminished without the carefully constructed confidence that had made her so convincing as a nanny. Her hair had been cut short, and she wore the standard orange jumpsuit of someone being held without bail. "Miss Walsh," Dr. Patricia Hendricks was saying, "can you explain to the court why you chose to target the Hayes family specifically?" Rebecca's voice was quiet but clear. Emma Hayes was the lead investigator on Sarah Chen's case. When Sarah disappeared from foster care, Agent Hayes was assigned to find her, but the case went cold, and Sarah's body wasn't found for 2 years. I blamed Emma for giving up. Emma watched from the gallery, taking notes as Rebecca methodically dismantled the fantasy that had consumed 5 years of her life. The psychological evaluation had revealed the depth of Rebecca's trauma: childhood sexual abuse in foster care, multiple placements, aging out of the system with no support or family connections. The real Sarah Chen had been the only person to show her kindness during a brief placement in the same group home. "Did you genuinely believe you were Sarah Chen?" Dr. Hendricks continued. "Sometimes," Rebecca admitted. The lines blurred. "I'd studied her case files so intensively, learned everything about her life, that her memories started to feel like my memories. When I was planning what to do to Emma's family, it felt like I was getting justice for something that had been done to me personally." Prosecutor Janet Mills leaned forward. "Miss Walsh, can you describe the extent of your surveillance of the Hayes family?" Emma had seen most of this evidence already, but hearing it laid out systematically was still chilling. Rebecca had been watching them for 10 months before applying for the nanny position. She had learned Emma's work schedule, Lily's school routine, even the times when David picked up their daughter for his custody weekends. She had researched Emma's psychological history through medical databases, her financial situation through credit reports, her professional reputation through FBI contacts. "I accessed Agent Hayes's personnel files through a contact at a private investigation firm," Rebecca continued. "I knew about her PTSD, her career struggles, her divorce proceedings. I crafted my approach specifically to exploit her vulnerabilities." Detective Kim, sitting beside Emma, shook her head. "The level of planning is extraordinary. She spent more time researching your family than most people spend researching a house purchase." Or the psychological evaluation had revealed something else disturbing. Rebecca had done this before, though not to the same extent. The Portland families hadn't been random targets. Each had been selected because they had some connection to unsolved missing children cases. Rebecca had appointed herself as an avenging angel for forgotten victims, destroying families in the name of justice that existed only in her mind. "Miss Walsh," the prosecutor continued, "let's discuss the other families. Can you tell the court about the Hendersons in Portland?" Rebecca's composure cracked slightly. "Mr. Henderson was a social worker who had closed several missing child cases too quickly. I documented evidence that he was inappropriate with some of the children in his care. When I presented that evidence to his wife, she confronted him. Their car accident happened during that confrontation." Emma's blood ran cold. Rebecca hadn't just manipulated the families. She had deliberately created the crises that led to their destruction. And the Yamadas? Mrs. Yamada was a family court judge who had terminated parental rights in cases where children later went missing from foster care. I provided information to some of the biological parents she had ruled against. Information about her home address, her family's routine. The fire wasn't supposed to happen, but some people are more violent than others. The courtroom was silent except for the scratching of the court reporter's pen. Rebecca had been systematically targeting people she blamed for failures in the child protection system, using their own children as weapons against them. "What was your plan for Lily Hayes?" Dr. Hendricks asked. Rebecca looked directly at Emma for the first time during the hearing. "I was going to be a better mother than Emma could be. I had documented evidence of Emma's mental health issues, her work obsession, her inability to provide stable emotional support. I would have given Lily everything Emma couldn't, even if it meant Emma's death. Emma's death was a possibility I had considered. If she couldn't accept that Lily belonged with me, then yes. I had staged it to look like suicide resulting from PTSD. There would have been no investigation." Emma felt sick. Rebecca had been planning her murder with the same methodical attention to detail she had brought to everything else. If Marcus hadn't been investigating the Portland cases, if Emma hadn't trusted her instincts despite her self-doubt, she and Lily both could have died. Judge Morrison called for a recess, and Emma stepped outside the courtroom for air. The hallway of the King County Courthouse buzzed with the usual activity. Lawyers consulting with clients, families waiting for hearings, the everyday machinery of justice grinding forward. Marcus found her by the windows overlooking downtown Seattle. "How are you holding up?" "I keep thinking about what she said, that she would have been a better mother," Emma replied. "The terrifying thing is, in some ways, she might have been right. She was patient with Lily, attentive, creative. She gave my daughter things I was too busy or too damaged to provide. She was also systematically destroying your family and planning your murder," Marcus pointed out. "Good childcare skills don't balance that out." Emma nodded, but the doubt lingered. The past 3 weeks had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about her parenting, her career obsession, her struggle to balance protection with nurturing. Rebecca's criticisms, delivered through the lens of mental illness, had still contained kernels of truth. "Dr. Vasquez wants to see you," Marcus continued, referencing the FBI's consulting psychiatrist who had been working with Emma since the incident. "She thinks you're ready to consider going back to bureau work." "I haven't decided if I want to go back." "What does Lily think?" Emma smiled for the first time in days. "She wants me to catch bad guys again, but only the ones who hurt children. She's very specific about my career parameters." They returned to the courtroom for the sentencing phase. Judge Morrison had reviewed the psychiatric evaluations, the victim impact statements, and the extensive evidence of Rebecca's crimes across multiple states. "Miss Walsh," he said, his voice carrying the weight of years on the bench, "you have pled guilty to kidnapping, stalking, identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. The court recognizes that you suffered significant trauma as a child, but the trauma does not excuse the deliberate and systematic harm you inflicted on innocent families." Rebecca stood to receive her sentence, her shoulders straight but her face resigned. "The court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years contingent on successful completion of intensive psychological treatment." Emma felt a complex mix of relief and sadness. Justice had been served, but it wouldn't undo the violation her family had experienced. Rebecca would spend her prime adult years behind bars, and the families in Portland would never fully recover from their losses. As the bailiffs led Rebecca away, she stopped and looked back at Emma one final time. "Take care of her," she said simply. "She's special." Emma nodded, tears threatening despite everything. "I will." Outside the courthouse, the Seattle rain had returned, turning the city gray and reflective. Emma and Marcus walked to their cars in comfortable silence, the weight of the case finally lifting. "What's next for you?" Marcus asked. Emma looked up at the sky, feeling cleaner somehow despite the drizzle. "Lily and I are going to take a vacation, somewhere sunny where we can remember what normal feels like. And then I think I'm ready to help other families who've been through what we went through. Back to the bureau? Maybe. Or maybe something new. I've learned that my instincts are still good, even when I don't trust them. And I've learned that protecting my daughter doesn't mean hiding from the world. It means making the world safer for other children." Marcus smiled. "The real Sarah Chen would approve of that, I think." Emma nodded, finally able to think about the dead girl without the overlay of Rebecca's obsession. Sarah Chen had been a real child with her own hopes and dreams, not a symbol or a cause. Her memory deserved better than to be weaponized by someone seeking revenge. "She would," Emma agreed. She was a protector too, from what Rebecca said. She looked out for the smaller kids. As they parted ways, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The woman who had infiltrated her life was gone. Her daughter was safe, and the future stretched ahead with possibility instead of fear. Justice had been served, but more importantly, truth had been restored. Emma Hayes knew exactly who she was again, and she was ready to rebuild her life on that foundation. The cleanup was complete. Now came the much harder work of healing. 6 months after Rebecca Walsh's sentencing, Emma Hayes stood in the gleaming lobby of the FBI's Seattle field office, her new credentials clipped to a navy blazer that actually fit properly. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in golden light that felt like a promise rather than a threat. "Agent Hayes," Director Sarah Martinez said, extending her hand with a smile. "Welcome back to the Bureau. Your new unit is excited to meet you." Emma's return hadn't been to her old role in behavioral analysis, but to something entirely new: the Family Protection Initiative, a specialized unit that investigated crimes targeting domestic security through infiltration and long-term manipulation. Rebecca Walsh's case had become the prototype for a new category of domestic terrorism, one that used the most intimate vulnerabilities of family life as weapons. "Thank you, Director. I'm ready to get to work." Ding! The irony wasn't lost on Emma that her traumatic experience had positioned her perfectly for this role. She understood both the investigative techniques needed to uncover sophisticated deception and the psychological impact on victims who discovered their most trusted relationships were lies. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Good luck on your first day, Mommy. I packed extra cookies in your lunch. Love you." Emma smiled, tucking the phone away. Lily was thriving in a way that surprised everyone, including the child psychologists who had expected lasting trauma from her experience with Rebecca. Instead, her daughter seemed to have integrated the experience into her understanding of human complexity with remarkable resilience. "Some people get confused about who they're supposed to be," Lily had explained to her second-grade class during a presentation about feelings. "But that doesn't mean they're completely bad people. It means they need help," the teacher had called Emma afterward, marveling at a 6-year-old's capacity for nuanced thinking about mental illness and criminal behavior. Emma had simply smiled, knowing that Lily had learned the lesson every FBI agent eventually discovered. The world was more complicated than simple categories of good and evil. Agent Marcus Rivera appeared at Emma's elbow, now wearing his own federal credentials as her new partner. His transfer from Seattle PD had been approved after his work on the Rebecca Walsh case demonstrated the kind of cross-jurisdictional thinking the new unit would require. "Ready to see your office?" he asked. Emma's new workspace was a far cry from her old cubicle in behavioral analysis. The Family Protection Initiative occupied an entire floor, with state-of-the-art technology for tracking digital surveillance, psychological profiling equipment, and most importantly, a victim support center staffed with trauma counselors and family therapists. "We've got 3 active cases already," Marcus said, pulling up files on the main display screen. "A nanny in Denver whose background completely fabricated, identical to Walsh's method. A tutor in Miami who's been documenting concerning behavior from the parents he works for, and a housekeeper in Phoenix who's been accessing financial records and creating detailed family behavioral profiles." Emma studied the cases, her trained eye picking out patterns that would have been invisible 6 months ago. Each perpetrator was using legitimate caregiving roles to gain intimate access to families, then systematically documenting evidence that could be used to destroy those families from within. "They're all connected," she said, pointing to similarities in their documentation methods. "Same software for creating false backgrounds, same psychological evaluation templates for building cases against parents." Rebecca wasn't working alone, she was part of a network. The realization sent chills down Emma's spine. Rebecca Walsh hadn't been a lone obsessive seeking personal revenge. She had been part of an organized operation that was targeting families across the country, using the child protection system itself as a weapon. The Portland families, the victims in Colorado and Florida, they all had one thing in common, Marcus said grimly. Parents who worked in child protection services, family court, social work, or law enforcement. Someone is systematically targeting the people who are supposed to protect children. Emma's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she recognized but hadn't expected to see. The federal prison where Rebecca Walsh was serving her sentence. "Agent Hayes," she answered, gesturing for Marcus to begin recording. "Emma." Rebecca's voice was different than it had been in court, clearer, more present. "I've been getting help, real help, and there are things I need to tell you. Things about the people who trained me. I'm listening. I wasn't the only one. There are 12 of us, maybe more. We were recruited through foster care alumni networks, support groups for survivors of system abuse. Someone found broken people like me and taught us how to weaponize our trauma against families." Emma's heart pounded. "Who recruited you?" "Dr. Elizabeth Chen. She said she was Sarah's aunt, that she'd been searching for justice for her niece. But Emma, I don't think that's true. I think she's been using Sarah's death, using all our dead children to build an army." The name hit Emma like a physical blow. Dr. Elizabeth Chen had been one of the consulting psychiatrists on the original Sarah Chen missing persons case. She had been the one who recommended closing the investigation, who had suggested the girl was likely a runaway who didn't want to be found. "Dr. Chen has been recruiting victims of the foster system for years," Rebecca continued. "She trains us, funds our operations, helps us build false identities, but we're not getting justice, Emma. We're just creating more trauma, more broken families. I see that now." Emma looked at Marcus, who was already pulling up Dr. Chen's background on his computer. The woman had consulting contracts with Child Protective Services in 14 states, access to thousands of case files, and most importantly, the professional credibility to close investigations before they could uncover inconvenient truths. "Rebecca, are you willing to testify about this, to help us stop the others?" The pause stretched long enough that Emma worried the connection had been lost. When Rebecca spoke again, her voice was determined. "Yes, but Emma, you need to be careful. And Chen knows everything about your background, your family, your new position with the Bureau. She's been watching you since before I ever came to Seattle." The line went dead. Emma stared at the phone, pieces of a much larger puzzle finally clicking into place. Rebecca Walsh hadn't chosen her randomly, and Dr. Chen's interest wasn't coincidental. Someone had been orchestrating events around Emma's life for years, using her guilt over the Sarah Chen case as a weapon against her. "We need to contact the director immediately," Marcus said. "If Dr. Chen has been manipulating federal investigations—" "Wait." Emma held up her hand, her analytical mind working through implications. "If we move too fast, we'll spook her and lose the network. But we also can't assume our communications are secure if she has bureau access." Emma's phone buzzed with another text from Lily. "Mrs. Patterson says there's a new student teacher in my class today. She's really nice and knows all about you. She said you used to work together." Emma's blood turned to ice. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door, Marcus close behind. "What's wrong?" "Dr. Chen just made her next move," Emma said grimly. "And this time, she's going after Lily directly." As they raced through Seattle traffic toward Lily's school, Emma realized that Rebecca Walsh's imprisonment had been the opening move in a larger game, not the end of one. Somewhere out there, a woman who had spent decades manipulating the child protection system was preparing to eliminate the FBI agent who had finally discovered the truth. But Emma Hayes was no longer the broken, self-doubting woman who had hired a nanny 6 months ago. She was a federal agent again, backed by the full resources of the Bureau, armed with hard-won knowledge about how predators operated within trusted systems. Most importantly, she was a mother who had already lost her daughter once. She would not let it happen again. The final confrontation with the true architect of the conspiracy was about to begin, and this time, Emma held all the cards. The verdict was about to be delivered, and it would be absolute. Epilogue. 1 year later, Emma sat in her home office, now equipped with FBI-grade security systems and a direct line to the Seattle field office. The Victorian house had been renovated, its vulnerabilities eliminated, its warmth restored. Through the window she could see Lily playing in the backyard with their new dog, a German shepherd named Justice, who had been trained to detect intruders. The Family Protection Initiative had dismantled Dr. Chen's network completely, rescuing 11 children who had been placed with compromised caregivers and prosecuting 14 adults who had been manipulating families across the country. Dr. Chen herself was serving life in federal prison, her decades-long conspiracy finally exposed. Rebecca Walsh had been a key witness in the trials, her testimony helping to convict the woman who had exploited her trauma for criminal purposes. She was making genuine progress in therapy, working toward eventual rehabilitation and the possibility of building a legitimate life. Emma's phone rang. Another family in crisis, another case where trust had been weaponized against innocent people. But now she had the tools, the team, and most importantly, the hard-won wisdom to fight back. "Agent Hayes," she answered, ready to begin again. In the backyard, Lily's laughter rang out clear and joyful, the sound of a child who understood that the world contained both danger and protection, that some people were broken, but others were strong enough to hold the pieces together. The rule was simple: those who fucked around would find out. And Emma Hayes had become very, very good at delivering that education.